Representative Stenquist. It's great to have you here. Can you
Thank you.
tell us a little bit about the district that you represent in Utah?
Yeah, well, and it has changed because of redistricting last year. So the district that I have represented for the last 4 years is about 85% of Draper. It's all contained within Draper, except for the Utah County side and the northeast corner. Now, with redistricting, that northeast corner was included in the district, as well as some east part of Bluffdale, and then there's the west part of, part of the west part of Draper was taken out. So from 3rd East over, but it includes the prison property. It includes, all the way up to Juan Diego Catholic High School and most of Draper. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so
Yeah.
it does include a lot of where the tech companies are and a lot of
Yeah.
where tech employees live in this area.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
So this is your third term that you're running for.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And tell us, you've got you're seasoned, right? You've got a
Uh-huh.
couple terms in.
Mhm.
And as you've been sitting in the legislature, what gets you excited about the economy in Utah?
Well, I think that it's great that our economy is doing so well. Over the years, we've really shown that Utah is a great place to run a business, and a lot of businesses have come here. Um, that success has come with some challenges for sure, and
Mhm.
part of that is with the tight labor market, and now the economy seeing inflation, things like that. So we do have some challenges, but compared to other states, we are far and away doing really well. We're number one in many in most metrics. So and one of the things actually that really excites me is that it's not just that we have the lowest unemployment rate, or those kind of things. Those are fantastic, but included in that is the fact that Utah has the best opportunity for upward mobility.
Mm.
The most equality, like it's a great place for opportunity for someone who wants to work hard, get an education, work hard. They can succeed, and
Yeah.
and I think that that's fantastic. A really great thing about our economy.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned a couple of the things, concerns with inflation and all of
Mhm.
that. Any additional concerns that you have with the economy right now?
Well, just really everything, just dealing with the tremendous growth that we've seen. It just brings a lot
Mhm.
of challenges. We've got transportation infrastructure, we've got water, we've got, how do we provide, enough schools and housing, and all those
Mm.
kind of things. So, having a booming economy, those are, I guess, good problems to have. But when we take it to this extreme, it can be a lot to try and overcome and face. But I think that we're working on those things.
Right. And a lot of the things that we hear from our tech community is
Mhm.
challenges that come with housing. So
Yes.
either they're recruiting employees to come here, or they've got employees that would like to buy houses and they can't afford that. So then it makes us think about wages and do you think that the state should help with housing affordability? And if yes, then what does that look
Mhm.
like?
Well, and it's really important to understand, like, what's the role of government, whether it's local government, state government, federal government, in something like that. And I think there's maybe a few things we can do, but uh, really with affordable housing, government's options really are limited. It's really very market driven.
Mhm.
I'm hearing lately that our housing stock and our housing, our building is catching up. And so at some point, I think that the supply and demand hopefully will equalize a little bit, and that will ease. But I don't know that we're going to go back to, you know, and I don't know the prices are going to come down in housing.
Right.
I will say too, specifically talking about the tech industry, because as you know, I work in the tech industry,
Yes. Uh-huh.
and that's something that I do. And my company is one that we haven't, we've been remote for more than 2 years now, and I don't know that we will go back to the way it was
Mhm.
before. And so that has, I have noticed, it's really changed the dynamic. I have some of my team members in my organization that are relocating maybe to rural Utah,
Mm.
And then when I'm doing recruiting for tech workers, my search now is much more broad than it
Yeah.
was before. I know that a lot of tech workers, maybe they have offices overseas, things like that. As we do, I'm doing a lot of hiring in Latin America. I have some people in the in the Philippines, but um, we're less confined to a geographic location, I think, as we used to be, and that's, I think, going to change things quite a bit. I don't know exactly how it's going to play out.
Right, right. And you and I have had this conversation
Mhm.
before of the tight labor market. We're
Mhm.
competing, a lot of times with, with companies being able to be a little bit more broad. That also gives options for some of our Utah workers to go to companies that might pay a little bit more in other
Right.
states. And so, which leads me to kind of talking about education,
Mhm.
because that's such a huge priority for people who are in the tech community, not just because we're looking for a future workforce that we can hire from, but we've got families and our own kids, and we want to make sure that they have a good education experience. So
Mhm.
tell me what your priorities are when it comes to education in Utah.
Well, I think that it's just really important that we support our education system. We have we get really good outcomes from our education system, but we need to continue to support it as much as we can. Um, and that includes, we have a good ecosystem in Utah, I think, between district schools, school districts, charter schools, private education, and the more we can kind of foster that education system and make sure that we're supporting, parents, we're supporting teachers as they look at different options that they can use to educate their kids. Giving parents options. Not There's not a one size fits all for every kid,
Mhm.
and but making sure that we have many options available for parents to approach, and
So
and
when
and
you
then making
say
sure they're
many,
supported.
yeah,
Yeah.
so tell me, when you say many options, like what do you mean by options?
Well, but I mean, if your local district school, if you feel like your child could have better opportunities at, say, a charter school
Mm,
or homeschooling or whatever, those are all different things that different parents can look at, and some situations work better for other families or for a given child.
I see, I see.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so different various options to go to different forms of education and at
Right.
different locations. Okay,
Right.
okay,
Right.
cool.
Mhm.
So we got survey responses from about 3,000 individuals in the Silicon Slopes area.
Mhm.
And overwhelmingly across the board, no matter what role they played, if they were an engineer or in marketing, or what level, if they were an executive or account manager, um, overwhelmingly, the number one concern that came back was air quality.
Uh-huh.
And tell me what you think, the state's role is in issues like air quality, and why you advocate for that.
Yeah, and it's an issue that I hear about from a lot of my constituents. Air quality is, the way I look at it, it's not a partisan issue. Everybody breathes the same air,
Mhm,
but there are different approaches for how we can solve for that problem as well. And to a large extent, we've kind of plucked the low hanging fruit in a lot of ways, and we've made a lot of progress. One thing I do remind people is that our air, despite our population growth, our air is now cleaner than it's been in the last 50 years. So we've been able to reduce emissions despite our population growth.
mhm.
And the main way that we've done that is mostly through, and the state played a role in this years ago, where they worked with some of the refineries to produce tier 3 fuels. And so, and as those different, cleaner fuels have come on the market, along with cleaner vehicles, that's really been the majority of our air quality, our emission reductions, our air quality improvements have come from that, as well as other options, the other steps that we've taken. And so people kind of assume that, oh, it must be all all the pollution's coming from the refineries or from these industrial uses, but that's not actually the largest producer. It's for the longest time it's been our vehicles that have been the biggest producer. That and so as that has dramatically been coming down, at the next pretty soon in the next few years, our biggest pollution contributor will be buildings, our homes, and just our businesses, office buildings, things like that will be the number one contributor. And so looking 5-10 years down the road, we ought to be thinking about, well, what can we do to help improve emissions efficiency from homes and what they call area sources is what the Department of Air Quality would call it. So so it's an incremental approach and looking at various different solutions. We had a bill that came through one of my committees this year that was looking at just a rail switching yard in the downtown area, and they were saying that one rail switching yard would produce more pollution in a day than like rush hour traffic, just because of the inefficient equipment that they were using. And so we were looking at ways that we could push Union Pacific to upgrade their equipment. Just so it's looking at various ways and it's various solutions that incrementally will add up to improvements in our air quality. I think that and remote work has helped. I think that's another way that remote work has helped, is that if we can reduce miles traveled, encourage transit use, all those kind of things are small steps that we can take.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And I think you're right. It's such a big problem that there's not one solution. There must be many things that, it's interesting that you're talking about that in 5-10 years, that the buildings and homes will be the biggest contributor. We've got a lot of clean tech companies that are here in Utah. What would you suggest in terms of, how their involvement with the legislature? Is it letting them know that their technology is available? Are there incentives? Are there things that they can do to kind of make a big difference here in Utah?
Yeah, I think engaging with legislators is helpful, and developing those relationships, and so that people can understand that this is an important issue and what can we do to support these efforts. There's different, there's a lot of different ideas out there, and I think just the more support that we can provide, and let people know that it's still an important issue, that's always helpful. Yeah, especially here along the Wasatch Front. I think it's acutely felt for us along the Wasatch Front, but also letting other legislators that may represent different parts of the state know how important it is.
Right. Yep, that makes sense. Yeah. So we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about ESGs, these social credit scores that are kind of making, the headlines now. Tell me what your understanding is of ESGs and whether or not you think the state should be involved in that.
Yeah, the company that I work for, I work in the technology area, but the company does, it's a large financial services company. And so there have been some discussions about ESG investments and things like that, even within our company. And I think that it's really important that, and there's a lot of discussion about this. I started talking to Treasurer Oaks about this starting last year, actually, before it kind of went mainstream. And it's important that when we're doing, we can look at a couple different things. So there's government, there's the things that government uses in terms of government's credit score rating. We have a very good credit score rating. We invest our retirement funds, those kind of things. And it's important that when it comes to those types of either measurements or investments, that the goal is getting the best financial return out of those investments, whether it's for retirees or whomever. And so that is, I think, something that we need to, the state does have a role in making sure that we say, look, we don't want political or other types of criteria used to evaluate, like for example, the state's ability to pay back debt, or in our retirements. It's about just the financial return, and we want to maximize that. Now, if in the private sector, if an individual wants to invest and say, hey, you know what, I really want to invest in whatever it might be, based on some thing that they want to support, it might be clean energy or something else, that's perfectly fine, as long as it's transparent, as long as they understand, okay, here's what I want to invest in this fund, and I may be taking either a higher risk or getting a lower return, but because of my beliefs, I think it's important for me to do, I still want to do that. And as long as it's transparent, knowing like, okay, this is what the difference is going to be in your in your return, let people choose to do that. But I would never want that to be sort of forced on anybody. I mean, people need to understand and make choices for themselves about how their funds are invested and what their returns are going to be, and be able to make that choice for themselves. And the government, I think, should kind of stay out of that and just say, look, we're gonna invest with the idea of just maximizing our return. Right. And it's really as simple as that.
Really. So in a nutshell, the government, may focus on, or the state saying our focus is on, maximizing returns, and that's, the state's prerogative, and their fiscal responsibility. But if a company does it or an investor does it, that's their own prerogative as well.
Yeah, I mean, people are free to invest their money how they want to, right. and whether they want to just go after the maximum return on the maximum returns, or if they want to invest it on some cause that they feel strongly about, that's fine.
That's
an individual choice. Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. So speaking of when the state gets involved in private businesses, there was a last legislative session, HB 60. So that was the vaccine passport. So it would essentially not allow for any business to require vaccines in general, not just COVID, or not allow businesses requiring vaccines of their employees. Tell me how you feel about that, because it was very much a controversial issue on the Hill.
Yeah. Well, I think that for the most part, that personal health decisions should be up to individuals, and but I know that maybe there are companies that have a compelling reason that they may say, hey, we have a for whatever reason a hazardous work environment, either for our employees or for our customers or clients that we serve, that there might be some compelling reason. Maybe you work in a healthcare setting where there may be some requirements. And but I think that the biggest problem that I heard with HB 60 was that it would essentially create a protected class, and that opens up a whole can of worms for businesses, and that was very concerning to me once I understood the full implication of that. And so that was the biggest concern that I had. And I think that, whenever you're doing legislation, you have to be very careful, talk to different stakeholders, understand and what any unintended consequences might be. And so you can make sure that, we wouldn't have a negative impact. I think that bill could have had some really negative impacts for businesses. And so maybe it needed to be changed. I don't know.
But it didn't pass. So
it didn't pass, because I think that there wasn't, because of the different concerns that were there, that there wasn't an agreement that people were able to come to. So.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Those are my questions. Is there anything you want to, if you wanted to say, or on your platform, or, that we could record?
So, one thing I would like to point out, going back to our conversation about, attracting a workforce, which I know is, that's a big concern for those of us in the, hiring tech workers. One thing that was interesting is that a few years ago, I heard that there was a study that was done by the Kempsey Gardner Policy Institute talking about the best way to attract and retain, especially tech workers. And they said probably the best thing that we could do, or the biggest attraction for those workers to come to Utah, is our fantastic outdoor recreation opportunities. And so I chair a commission called the Outdoor Adventure Commission, and we're putting together a long-term strategy for outdoor recreation statewide. I was involved when I was on the Draper City Council in planning for the trails up in Corner Canyon, and because of the work that I did, doing trails and things like that here, that was my passion for many years. That's kind of carried into my legislative service, and now I'm doing that statewide and seeing how we can, create, whether it's trail systems, off-road vehicle use, climbing routes, boat ramps, campsites. We're putting all of that stuff together. It's very exciting, and so I think that's an area where tech companies can partner with us in the state and say, how can we promote and enhance our outdoor recreation opportunities? Because that's something that people really love to come to Utah to live here and work here. They can, work at a great company and have a ski resort, 45 minutes up the road. And
Right.
that's, go do some couple of ski runs and then come into the work. It's just unbelievable. It's something you don't get anywhere else.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a huge recruiting benefit that we can offer in the state that is very unique to us. So you're running against Carolyn Phippen
Mhm.
for this seat. Tell me what's maybe the biggest difference between your approach and her approach.
Right. Well, looking at my voting record, I think, I have a conservative voting record. I adhere to conservative principles that I think that have made Utah successful and given us some successful outcomes. I'm also someone who listens and I try to find common sense approaches, practical solutions. Coming from an engineering background, that's my focus. Is I try to be solution oriented, and that means listening to different people, understanding where they're coming from. I'm not beholden to ideology. I'm grounded in principles, but not to an extreme where it's all about the ideology. And so I think that's probably one of the biggest differences is in that style of how to approach, how to collaborate with different people, colleagues, other legislators, and stakeholders in accomplishing things and getting things done. So I'm Representative Jeff Stenquist. I'm running for House District 46 in the Utah House of Representatives.